All right, I thought we'd go through the comparing asexual sexual reproduction assignment that I gave you guys before the break. Make sure everybody's got that, got those answers where you're supposed to have them. Thought it'd help you all along since I haven't got a lot of people turn that in yet. All right, so here we go. I had given you the first ones, asexual, one parent, sexual reproduction, two parents. Offspring have 100% the same genetic material as parent. That's asexual for sure, right? Because they're clones. Sexual reproduction, you have offspring get half of their genetic information from each parent. Right? On asexual reproduction, offspring are identical, right? Or cloning. Offspring on sexual reproduction have variation, so offspring are different. Asexual reproduction does not require fertilization. Sexual reproduction requires sex cells for fertilization. Really, that's the big difference there. Asexual reproduction prevents organisms from adapting. Remember, if they're all the same, it's tough for a species to adapt to changes in the environment if everybody's a clone. And it's the opposite with sexual reproduction. Results in natural selection. That means the differences, the variation, allow adaptation, which allows for natural selection. It's a much faster, easier process on asexual reproduction. On sexual reproduction, though, you have the ability to adapt to the environment. All right. The next part was how do they reproduce? And you had this three kind of simple questions. It says determine the following statements about reproduction, if they're true or false. And the first one says organisms only reproduce sexually. Now we know that's not true, right? There's asexual reproduction, so it can't be. The next one says organisms must have a partner to reproduce. Now we know that's not true. Asexual reproduction, you only have one parent, so that's another false one. The last one says some organisms do not reproduce sexually, and again, we know that there's asexual reproduction, so that one is actually true. Hopefully you got those right. All right. Then we had what type of reproduction, asexual, sexual, or both? A potato is buried in the soil. The eyes of the potato grow into a new potato plant. And I had given you that one. That's asexual reproduction. Those are tubers. Female frog lays her egg, then a male deposits his sperm on them. The eggs hatch into tadpoles that eventually lose their tails and legs become frogs. The male depositing the sperm on the eggs, that's fertilization. So yes, sexual reproduction. It says a litter of black and white puppies are born to a solid black mother and a solid white father. You have two parents there. That's sexual reproduction. On the starfish, it says if an arm is cut off with part of the center, the arm can grow into a whole new starfish. The original starfish will grow back the lost arm. That's asexual reproduction that's being described there. Now, we know starfish can also reproduce sexually, but it wasn't describing sexual reproduction there, it was describing asexual reproduction. Next one, we have strawberries, the butterflies, and the amoeba. Strawberry plants send out runners that grow into a new strawberry plant. That is describing asexual reproduction. That was one of the examples I gave you in the notes for asexual reproduction. Runners. On the butterfly, it says after mating, butterfly lays eggs which hatch into caterpillars that later form a chrysalis from which an adult butterfly emerges. Mating, that is sexual reproduction. Amoebas are able to divide, forming two individual identical cells. That's describing binary fission, and that's asexual reproduction. Again, that's one of those organisms that can reproduce sexually also, but that's describing asexual reproduction. Okay, the last ones are the hydra, the lizard, and the planaria. A hydra develops a bud which eventually breaks off the parent to form a new individual. That's describing asexual reproduction. In fact, that's budding. That's one of the types that I described in the notes. Hydras can reproduce sexually, but that's not what's being described there. The next one says lizards reproduce using internal fertilization, and most species lay eggs that hatch into fully developed young. It says the word fertilization there. So we know that's sexual reproduction. Now it goes on to say some species of lizard have the ability to grow back their tails. That's actually regeneration, but that's not regenerating a whole new individual. That's just a part of the animal. That's not reproduction at all. The first part is, though, and that's sexual reproduction. Then it says on the planaria, to produce offspring, planarians exchange sperm that fertilizes eggs which develop inside the body. That's describing sexual reproduction. Then it goes on to say they also have the unique ability to detach their tails and grow into new identical individuals. That's describing asexual reproduction. That's describing regeneration, fragmentation. So this is the only one you should have put both on. All right, then we have the Venn diagram at the end, and you're supposed to drag the light blue boxes into the correct circle. Now, they were numbered 1 through 10, so I just went in the order of the numbers. And 1 says make a new organism. That's both. Asexual reproduction makes new organisms, also sexual reproduction, so that goes in the middle. 2 says offspring are identical to parents, so that's asexual reproduction. 3 says 2 parents, so that's sexual reproduction. 4 says 1 parent, so that's asexual reproduction. 5 says no mate needed, so that's asexual reproduction. 6 says requires sex cells, that's sexual reproduction. 7 says allows for adaptation to survive, that's sexual reproduction. 8 says faster and easier, we know that's asexual reproduction. 9 says passes traits to offspring, that occurs in both asexual and sexual reproduction, so that's one of the ones that goes in the middle. And finally, 10, offspring are different from each other. That's sexual reproduction. So that's how you should have had those. Now, you didn't have to have them exactly in that order on both sides, but as long as you have those 4 on the asexual and those 4 on the sexual and those 2 in the middle, then you're good to go. Remember, if you haven't completed that, please do that and submit it. I am not going to give you a grade till you submit it, but since I've given the answers out, there's a pretty good chance you get 100 if you do submit it. So let's make that happen, guys.